Hey everybody, welcome back. So we're gonna do another drawing today here. I got my coffee because it's early and got all my stuff ready. So gonna do a little more, a little bit of a art tutorial for you here. So last time I did a charcoal sphere and thought about the idea of doing, same thing but showing you the pen and ink side, because a lot of the drawings I do are actually, I like to do a lot of stuff in pen. So it's a different medium, but so it's got its own style, it's got its own techniques, and obviously it's a lot different to shade in pen than it is with charcoal, because obviously you can't smudge it. So. But still got some of the same tools, obviously. Still got my pencil, got my eraser. You'll see why. Because drawing in pen obviously takes a little more practice. It takes a little more preparation. Because, well, once the pen hits the paper, that's pretty much it. I hate using whiteout. It makes it look really tacky. So, and again, can't draw a perfect circle. Just use the tools. Use the tools at your disposal. So, again, I'm going to sharpen something to catch your pencil shavings. And one of my friends actually watched my video and asked, asked why I use such small pencils. Well, I don't like to waste, so I actually use my pencils pretty good. I get as much use out of my pencils as I possibly can. So this is nothing. This is a big pencil to me. So again, we're just gonna draw out our circle and set that aside. And so we're going to try, obviously, again, plan out where your light source is coming from, and that's how you determine where your shadows are going to be. So today the light source is coming from up here, so we're going to say that our shadows are going to be down here. So we're going to plan it out to have the shadows this way. And it's going to be a lot of the same when it comes to, the pencils. But like I said, the majority of your drawing is going to be in pen. Here, you're gonna do this in pen later. You're just sketching it out first with the pencil. So getting a general idea. You don't even need to spend a lot of time with the pencil. Just because of the fact that you're going to be going back over that later on. So of course, you got your planned out thing here where there's that, and drawing out basically where the shadows are going to be, just to get an idea. This does not by any means have to be perfect, because it's going to be, going back over with your pen. And I like to use pens like this, ballpoint pens. They're really good. They go on pretty smooth. You can obviously use whatever pen you like, whatever pen works for you. Just figure out which one works, which one you like. That's the one you use. So then just go back over it. Go back over your pencil lines with the pen. So you'll notice I get really focused doing this kind of stuff. Everybody always tells me how they notice when I'm drawing. I get to really serious. I get really concentrating. To me, this is almost therapeutic. I don't know what it is, but something about drawing just kind of relaxes me, calms me down. It's a stress relief. You notice I'm turning the page because of the fact that to me it's easier to turn the page rather than to go around on all the different angles and stuff like that. Drawing at a certain angle is really kind of tricky to me. So don't be afraid to turn the page. Turn the paper. If you feel like you're not getting it right, you're not hitting the paper the right way. Whatever works, whatever makes you feel comfortable. And things like this, when you're having to fill in a lot of black space, also helps to get pens with a larger gauge of line. Certain pens draw thicker lines than others, and a lot of times you go to the arts and crafts stores and you'll see that they've got like a little piece of paper sitting off to the side for you to test your pen out. That's actually really helpful. I don't know what store started doing that, but it was a brilliant idea to let everybody be able to like just take the cap off, try out the pen, see what the line looks like, see if that's the kind you want. If you want a finer tipped pen, it helps to be able to try that out in the store. So over here on the far side of my light source is obviously where the majority of the shadows are going to be. So when you do this, it does tend to take a little bit of a little bit of a thicker pen, or even just to get a bottle of ink and a brush. You can even do that. Again, anybody can do this stuff. It's really not that hard. Just takes practice. Just takes going over, picking up your pencil, putting it to the paper, practicing. It's just like anything, really. And I mean, everybody says it takes skill to be an artist. Yeah, it does to some degree. Yes, it takes some skill to be an artist. But you know what? Art is subjective. Art's very subjective. That's why you see $1 million paintings being sold of nothing. Like I could literally throw together a painting in 10 minutes and put it on a display and try and sell it for thousands and thousands of dollars. Somebody's probably going to buy it at some point. Somebody's going to think it's good. And I've actually tested this. I've actually seen people react to some of my stuff that I did. I put almost no effort into it. And despite the little bit of effort I put into it, people were just gawking over it and thinking, oh my God, that's amazing. How'd you do that? How much time that would take? It's like 10 minutes. So as you can see here, the shadowing when it comes to ink is completely different than shadowing when it comes to anything like a pencil or charcoal or something like that. And again, I'm just turning the page a little bit here and there just to get the angles that I want to hit a little bit easier. So yeah, the way you do shadowing with pen is just little lines, cross-thatched lines like this. And the more dense you make those lines, the obviously thicker and darker the shadow is going to be. Because if you think about it, if you really think about it, all this here is just really, really dense lines. Because that's all this can do. This can just do lines, really. So it's just really dense lines and creating a solid black. Because the lines are so dense together. So the farther apart the lines are, the less dense the shadows are. This also somewhat creates a texture. People don't really realize. It's one of those things a lot of people seem to take for granted. But things like this create a different texture. The way you do it obviously creates what kind of texture the object you're drawing is. So this this particular sphere clearly has a much softer texture because you're doing softer shadows. If I was to do hard shadows, that would create the illusion of a much harder object, like maybe it's a metal ball or something like that. And so you kind of get the idea here. That's all it is, just cross-hatched lines. Creating that texture there. So now you got that. And then of course you got the shadows along the bottom. Same thing. And so, like I said, I get really concentrated, so I'm sorry I'm not talking that much when it comes to this. So it's just, like I said, cross-hatched lines. You just cross these lines up and creates your shadows or the illusion thereof. You could essentially just say all I'm doing is like just scribbling these lines onto here to create this. So there you have it. Like I said, same basic thing. Just it's the only difference is it's in pen. To give you an idea of the difference, side by side. There's the charcoal. There's the ink. Same, just completely, two completely different mediums. Same results. Just practicing your different techniques. I mean, I even used the same the same size stencil to create that. But just to give you an example, what I was talking about real quick with the different textures, I'm going to do a smaller one real quick so I can do it faster. But just to give you an idea of like if I was to do. One of the other things you can't really see, but if I was to show this really quick, I forgot to mention this. If I was to show you this real quick, you'll notice you can't quite see because the lines are so faint, but if you looked close, you could see the pencil marks are there. So when you're doing ink, the last thing you do is erase your pencil lines. So just go over this very, very lightly with your rubber eraser here. And that gets rid of all your pencil lines there. So there's that. And so now what I was going to talk to you about like was the textures. So if you were to take like, let's go with this size. That works. Another ball. And we're going to do same thing where the light's shining from down this way. And we're going to do a texture of something a little more solid. Okay, so those are going to be our lines there. And let's do a really hard shadow on this. Let's say that this is something that's got a really concentrated light source behind it. Obviously, you know, harder light source, you're going to get a harsher light source. You're going to end up with a harder shadow. Like this one I have here. You can see the shadow in my hand. The closer I get, the more defined the shadows become further. Or the closer to the ground I get, because this is a very concentrated light source. If I was to have a much more diffused light, the shadows wouldn't be nearly as much. If I had multiple light sources, if I had like another light over here somewhere as opposed to just the one over here, you'd have a much more soft shadow. So this is going to be like a single light source that's much more concentrated. So now let's do this. So outline here. Again, harkening back to our elementary school days of staying inside the lines. And like I said, this is really not that hard. We learned how to do this stuff in elementary school. It's just a matter of going back and remembering. I remember a play that I heard about in high school. Later did a scene for an acting class. Is all I ever need to know I learned in kindergarten. Interesting play. So yeah, so basically when you're dealing with anything like graphite, charcoal, pencils, stuff like that, anything that you can smudge, you're dealing in shadows and things like that, whereas when you're drawing in something like pen and ink, you're dealing more in shapes. Granted, there's shadows in it too, but they're not it's not the same. So here we go. And creating a second shadow here, you can see this is sort of like just to play with the glares that you get with anything like this. We're gonna say this is like a metallic ball. Kind of like those stress balls they used to sell all the time. You know, the ones you'd hold in your hand, twirl them around. It's something like that. Yeah. One of the things I personally do with this, when you have a completely black shadow right next to another shadow, like the shadow on the ground. I'll leave just a smidgen of white right there. I'll leave a smidgen of empty space just to distinguish between the two. It's entirely up to you. That's just what I do. Makes it easier for the eye to interpret. You don't even need to necessarily have that there the whole way. Like I could actually fill in. If you look closely, you can see there's a tiny bit of white between the ball and the shadow on the ground. But even if I was to fill in a little bit over here on the side and make that solid, your eye would be able to tell the difference. Your eye would be able to figure out, oh, okay, so just enough to let the person know that there is, you know, a distinction between these two shapes here. And so there you have that. And that's how you do that. Like I said, it's really not difficult to learn to draw. It's just a matter of putting pencil to paper, practicing over and over again. And the more you practice, the more you're able to do much more complex things. This is a sketchbook I have where every now and then I add stuff to it. Just whenever I get inspired to draw something. And, you know, this is some of the work that I've done in pen right here. So you can see there's a lot of different things, ways of doing texture, ways of doing, you know, faces and stuff, which I think I'm going to get into how to draw faces next time in a little more detail. So if you like this video, hit that like button, leave me a comment on what you think, and don't forget to subscribe for more content coming up in the future. Thanks for watching, everybody.